This is something that I've been wanting to do for some time, and that is deal with what is called the psychological disorder or problem, however you want to term it, of the Seventh Day Adventist organization, the members, and apparently the hierarchy in it as well, dealing with what is called cognitive dissonance. Now, let me read you a definition of that so that when I'm talking about it, you'll have some idea of what I'm referring to. And this fits the Seventh Day Adventist organization to a T. And I quote here on the definitions: cognitive dissonance, and cognitive being thought now, and dissonance being a conflict, or you have a conflict in thoughts, is what it's referring to. Anyway, cognitive dissonance is concerned with an incompatibility in the relationship between two cognates, or two thoughts. This theory was first proposed by Leon Festinger, states that people need to maintain consistency in their beliefs, attitudes, and behavior. Contradicting cognates, or thoughts that is, serve as a driving force that compels the mind to acquire or invent new beliefs or to modify existing beliefs in order to reduce the amount of dissonance or conflict between cognates and bring them back into a consistent relationship. In other words, taking these ideas that they had that are wrong and trying to reinvent them or modifying so they'll be at ease with their thinking again and bring them back into some consistent relationship. Now, I go on here. Although alternative interpretations of the process have been put forward, the phenomenon has proved reliable. Thus, it appears that people that lack integrity, when faced with the type of inconsistencies, prefer to adjust their stated beliefs or attitudes than to admit they were ever wrong. A mature person, on the other hand, one united in mind and in body, centered on purpose of truth, beauty, goodness, and true love, would expect to show greater integrity. And what he's saying here, these people who have these conflicting thoughts in their mind, as cognitive dissonance is rather than admitting they're wrong and looking at what they're wrong and being able to rationalize where they went wrong, they're so deep into this that rather than admitting that they were wrong, they prefer to come up with alternatives or new belief or invent new beliefs or change the existing ones in order to reduce the amount of conflict that is going on with them by seeing these conflicting thoughts that they have. Now then, let me put this back to 1844 in the Seventh Day Adventist organization to show you what I'm talking about. Remember now, rather than admitting they're wrong, they'd rather reinvent new beliefs or modify existing beliefs in order to some way ease the conflict in their mind. In other words, 1844 didn't happen. Jesus didn't come back. So they all had this conflicting thoughts in their mind. Well, what happened? What went on? No, they, rather than dropping it and saying we should have been dabbling in predicting the return of Jesus to begin with, they tried reinventing it. They tried modifying it to reduce this conflict in their mind. And I have shown you on several occasions the two different three angels messages that has been preached by the Seventh Day Adventist organization. One by the pioneers and the second three angel message by current Seventh Day Adventist organization. Well, the first three angel message that was put forth by William Miller and endorsed by Ellen White and other members of the pioneers of the Seventh Day Adventist organization, it all fell apart. That's what happened. Nothing that Miller did was true on that chart. Remember now, Ellen White had already given her stamp of approval on this chart drawn up by William Miller that God had directed this young preacher's hand. He had shown him every step of the way, In other words, she endorsed everything on his chart as being right. But all of a sudden, it is wrong. And they had the great disappointment because of that. And the great disappointment is a perfect example of this psychological phenomenon that we call cognitive dissonance manifested itself through the discomforting expectations that arose in a religious context. So anyway, so now then, rather than dropping it, remember I read this in part of the definition, rather than dropping it, they begin to invent new ideas or to modify their existing beliefs to find some comfort zone there. So they came up with first of all, they came up, well, he didn't come back in 1844. So then they came back up that he's going to come back in 1851 now. So this settled this conflict for a little while. But there's still a lot of things going on during this 7-year period that they're having conflict with as well. For instance, what happened, to Jesus? Why didn't he come back and so forth? And so they began reinventing it, and came up with, okay, he's moved back to the most holy place now, and when he gets through there, he's coming back in 1851. And they came up with sanctuary doctrine then and several other things. And this is one of the reasons why Ellen White was saying 1850, the statement I've shown in several videos, get ready, get ready, get ready. What we've had years to learn, we've only got a few months now, because she, along with Bates and Whites and others that became part of what is called the shut door group of the Adventist movement, we're now predicting the return of Jesus Christ in 1851. That's why that get ready statement came out. Well, he just doesn't come back in 1851. So again, this entire process comes back. This cognitive dissonance comes back. These conflicting thoughts that they have. It's another great disappointment for them. They thought they had it right again. They had readjusted and invented new beliefs and modified what they had. And so Jesus doesn't come back. So the next step would be, again, rather than dropping it, they refuse to do that. They begin to reinvent it again and to modify it again, so they can settle this conflict in their mind, something they held so strongly. They begin to readjust and reinvent it. So that's when they came up with the second three-angel message, and included in there investigative judgment that was never a part of the first three-angel message to begin with. No, that was an invented theory that they had. They readjusted their beliefs again and came up with something just as bad that they called investigative judgment that really didn't come about until about 1857. So now then, everything, their mind seems calm. It's just like, oh, well, we've settled this conflict now. We don't have this conflict of thoughts anymore. We've taken all this, we worked it out. We reinvented it. We modified it until where we're comfortable in our thinking again. And but there's another problem. People begin to wonder, well, what about our loved ones that have already died and everything, What about them? So now they have to go back and step by step reinvent things, like soul sleep. Well, if Jesus hasn't really come back yet, and he's still in heaven, looking at all the sins of the people, they can't be in hell and they can't be in heaven, so where are they at? Well, let's just tell them they're soul sleeping. They're not in hell, they're not in heaven, their body's just laying there in the grave, waiting on Jesus to come back and claim them again. And they have this discomforting spirit again within them, these contradictions in their thoughts and everything. And they're trying to reinvent them as it goes to make all this seem plausible to them, to make all of it seem, it's really real, but it's really not. Again, this is in the religious context of cognitive dissonance that this is occurring. So now then, through the years, they find things that are wrong in the writings of Ellen White. And again, rather than admitting she made a mistake, they just kind of start deleting things out there or changing words here or there. I pointed out where they changed words to where in the first three angel message, it only involved the Protestant churches. In fact, Ellen White said that in the Great Controversy, that it was only the Protestant churches. But now all of a sudden things have changed, and later they changed the Great Controversy and said not the Protestants alone. So they brought the Catholic Church back into it. Once again, reinventing, readjusting things as they're going through their beliefs. And so now they get to the point where they feel comfortable. And here's the thing about it. The more people that can draw into this, the more it seems a plausible religion. The more it seems like it might be mainstream. That's why they push these big seminars they have. Because the more people they got in there, the more realistic it really must be. See, we aren't crazy after all. And even though they've invented all of this since 1844. They've been reinventing and modifying their beliefs and changing them. And so then when they begin to look at other people's statements about the Seventh Day Adventist organization, for instance, like my videos, here's all this stuff coming up that a lot of you members may have not ever heard of. They're thinking, when did all this happen? How did it happen? And so now what they've done, and you can go and look at Ted Wilson's sermon at the General Conference, along with other writings of the church, where they're telling them now to look within. You've got all these scholars within the Seventh Day Adventist organization. Look within. Don't look from without. In other words, they're trying to stifle their people and get them to look at just the writings of the Seventh Day Adventist organization so they won't have all these conflicting thoughts in their mind. And Seventh Day Adventists buy into this, and they're just trying to trick us. They're trying to betray us. They're trying to deceive us. So they never actually go really investigate to see the lies they're being told. They never go investigate to see the lies put up in these videos on YouTube by these Seventh Day Adventist members. They just think, well, they're just trying to trick us, or the Jesuits have infiltrated us, and they're all after us now. And they have nothing more than this conflict going on back and forth, day in and day out. And so, until they lead up to a point now where you have thousands leaving the Seventh Day Adventist organization. In 1980 was one of the prime examples. They had a man by the name of Des Ford, who was one of their leading theologians. And he comes up, and for years he'd been one of their leading theologians. And all of a sudden he finds out investigative judgment is not tenable. It can't be. That's not what happened in 1844. So he begins then to show them how wrong they are about investigative judgment. And they hold what is called the Glacier View Conference. And Desmond Ford is pretty much in a kangaroo court, where he has questioned investigative judgment, showed them that it couldn't be right, and thus he's actually questioned Ellen White. So what do they do to him? Rather than looking and examining his material, they can't deal with it. So they withdraw his ministerial license. Over 100 ministers leave the church, and several million members leave the church. Because once again, all this has been brought up, and here's this cognitive dissonance, or competing thoughts, or conflicting thoughts, and they have to deal with it all over again. So the bottom line is this: from beginning until this day, they have been wrong. They just do not have the courage to admit that they have been wrong. And rather than admitting they're wrong, they go around and reinvent or modify existing things, or things that happened way back then, to give them some comfort level to believe that what they're saying is right. When in this statement I just read, it said, the mature person, on the other hand, one united in the mind, body, and the purpose of truth, would expect to show greater integrity. In other words, they would have investigated to see that Ellen White was wrong and never got involved with it to begin with. I'll be making some more videos on this to explain it further, but I wanted to do this one just to get it started, and I hope this has helped you in some way to understand why the turmoil within the Seventh Day Adventist organization, how they've gotten to where they've gotten to today, is because they've reinvented things, modified things that existed, and their cognitive dissonance, or their cognitive conflict, has got to handle this some way. Rather than admitting they were wrong, they just reinvent it, remodify it, and dupe their own people and trick them into believing that they're right, when we know they're totally wrong. Until next time, this has been Golly saying, God bless.